Hello everyone. If you remember, a couple of weeks ago I've made a few scapes in the online application Scapeit, and then you guys voted for your favorite, and that's what I'm gonna build today. The tank I got for this is the Oase ScaperLine 60, which is the first tank in the showroom when you enter the building, which means this side is gonna be visible. So we're gonna flip the original design. I think it's like an NA style aquarium. Simple, easy, quick. Join me on this fun and let's get to it. I have some hardscape pieces pre-selected, but I'm going to put in the first layer of soil so I can start building that. Today, we're going to use Dennerle Scaper soil, because why not? That was close. Dennerle says that for this soil you don't need a separate substrate layer, so that's what we're going to do today, and we'll see. I believe that for a few months or even a year it should be fine. If you build a tank for a much longer run, then I would definitely recommend putting in down something like 88% that works as filtration as well as substrate. I don't really remember how I built it in the back. The point of this is not to make an exact replication of the plans made in Scapeit. Scapeit is really good for designing the main frame of your layout, the plants and so on, but obviously you're not going to find the same pieces of hardscape. I think you can actually evolve it. The pieces I found for this build, I think they look much nicer than what was available in Scapeit design. Sort of looks the same. I have the same arch on the top and in the middle, and then I have a long piece running across. And also this piece is something that's entirely new to the Scape compared to the original design. That's it for the wood. I don't want to make crazy builds. This is going to be an NA layout, a nature aquarium layout. Now I'm going to have to start fixing the pieces of wood together. So I guess it's time to get some glue and paper towel. Since I'm going to use a lot of moss and epiphyte plants like Microsorums and Bolbitis, I'm not afraid to show some of the glue, because all this area is going to be basically hidden with the epiphytes. It's one piece. That was the goal. Now I'm going to tie some rock pieces on the bottom of the scape so it doesn't just float up. I think this would be heavy enough, but we're making sure. Oh, this is wet because I've tested if this piece of rock is heavy enough to keep it underwater, and it is. So now I'm gonna glue myself, I think. Let's just test if this stays underwater. Maybe it doesn't need any glue. There's a big tank. Yeah, it's definitely not heavy enough. But now it's wet. That's fun.
Feel free sometimes, but what doesn't make you will only make you stronger if you believe what they say.
The soil is moist. I've got my plants prepared. As you can see, it's not much. I'm gonna try to make this build as you would do it at home. We always use a bunch of plants to have a more final looking result on fill up, but now I'm going to try to use a bit less of plants. All this is in vitro. I have some Nymphaea lotus as well, but that's not cleaned up yet. I'm going to start in this area, which was planned to be Monte Carlo. There's a small tip as well for using less plants. Not using less plants, purchasing less plants. The plants I use now were ordered 2 or 3 weeks ago. They've been stored specifically for this project. And in the 2 weeks' time since they arrived to the shop, they've grown a lot. So if you plan ahead and order your plants, in vitro plants, a few weeks before the actual build and provide them with some light, but still in their packaging, they actually gonna grow. A lot of people would ask now that why don't we ship them in that condition? The reason is if the plant nurseries would sell the plants filled in the cup, they would go bad really quickly. This is why you need a strong pincet to be able to just tear off a piece of plant without the tweezer getting stuck. Another tip for you, because I feel like this today. Have just one piece of plant right up to the glass. This is something that you usually don't want to see, but if you have a plant like this, you can see in the coming days as the roots start to develop and shoot off from the plant. And that's a much quicker indication if the plant is healthy and in good condition than waiting for the plant itself to start to grow. Okay, so next up is the Lilaeopsis brasiliensis, which is going to be the middle layer. What I hate about this plant is that it starts to fall apart all the time. You need to take this off, try to figure out which one is the bottom of it, and then plant it really deep. We've just arrived to Blyxa japonica, which is one of my favorite plants. It's recommended to leave some space around them because as it starts to get bushy. The biggest issue with Blyxa is while it's in the box, it doesn't like heat and it doesn't like cold. Sometimes after planting, it melts as well, but usually the root system stays intact and it starts growing again after some time. It's gonna get a really nice reddish tint on the tip of the leaves under proper lighting. This tank runs with a Chihiros WRGB, so that's gonna be enough light for it. I'm gonna continue with the Rotala wallichii. We're gonna turn from the light reddish tips of the Blyxa, then is going to come the Rotala wallichii, which is like pinkish colors. On the other side, we're going to have the lotus, and if we still have the crypt tiger from the previous build, then I'm going to add that as well in the corner. Have some Rotala bonsai as well, which is a low-growing Rotala. It's going to be perfect in front of the wallichii that I just planted. It's going to make a graduation from the Monte Carlo to the wallichii. Again, slight addition of color because the tip of the bonsai tends to turn yellowish, really bright yellow. So it's a graduation as well from the green of the Monte Carlo to the pinkish reddish color of the wallichii. I'm gonna have some Staurogyne repens in here. I'm A nice tip for Staurogyne. After you plant it, in 2 or 3 weeks time, you're gonna start to see the very top of the plant start growing. Like this part starts to get higher and higher. If you trim the plant in that about 1 week time frame, you just trim the top shoot of the plant, then it gets real nice and bushy instead of growing high. Ah, that's great. That's gonna be a real nice addition to this tank in the corner. It's gonna float over the shape of this piece of wood if I plant it in here. So this is Microsorum Nero. The thing I'm not gonna use, despite it wasn't the plans, is moss. The Microsorum and the Bolbitis give me so much green in the hardscape area that I don't want to hide any more of the hardscape. So the last thing we are missing is the lotus. I've used it in the Tropica build a few months ago, in the 3-meter long tank that I built for Interzoo. What I'm a bit lucky with is, just like the in vitro plants, they had 2 or 3 weeks to grow before we used them since they got here. The lotus got here 3 weeks ago as well, which means it grew quite big. An interesting thing about the lotus, it doesn't only have roots, it comes from a bulb like this. Be careful not to tear off any part of this plant. And that's quite difficult actually. I'm gonna try to push it down into the soil by hand and not with a pincet. Originally I planned to use 2 pots of lotus, but this was actually so big, it has so many leaves, that I'm gonna just use the one. And when we fill it up, it's after some growing, it's actually gonna catch the water surface and it's gonna float around this area. It's really important if you're using lotus to consider how much shadow it's gonna make. So the leaves of the lotus are gonna cover about this area, which means it won't cover too much of the plants. If you have a leaf that gets to an area where you don't want it, or if one of them gets too big, just trim it back. And the best thing for that is to trim it on the bottom if you can reach it. Sort of looks like what I planned in Scaper. This is it. So the tank is done. We're gonna fill it up now. It's been 2 weeks since I built this, and you don't get the usual B-rolls in the end of this video, because as I mentioned during the build, I've used about the amount of plants that you would normally use at home. We always overplant our aquarium, so you get a nice final look after 2 weeks at the end of the videos. But in this case, I wanted to show what you should expect after about 2 weeks of development of a new aquarium. What we can see is that all the plants started to grow as they should. The Blyxa is coming up nicely in the back, also the Rotala wallichii. I just put in the fish this morning. I chose the 5-banded barbs. The males have a really nice red color, which really pops under the Chihiros lights, the WRGB we have on this setup. And yeah, in a few weeks time, or maybe I would give it about 2 months, all the plants gonna come up to the level I want them. That time we're gonna make a cinematic so you can see it as well, how it develops. That's it for this week. Thank you for joining me and see you next time. Goodbye.